I want to thank everyone for coming here tonight and welcome you to the Mount Gretna School of Arts Lecture Series. Tonight we're in the Heights Community Building, our classroom home for 10 years now, which is pretty amazing. I want to thank Stinson Strout for his support of the lecture series. Everybody say thank you, Stinson. Back there in the corner. Just in case you don't know what the school's all about, it's a 7-week pressure cooker that's all about connecting students with nature and learning how to see and paint. The students come in from all over the country and occasionally internationally. And I'm pleased to have Kamini Avril with us tonight. Stanley Lewis introduced me to her work and said, you got to have Kamini come. So I'm really happy she's here. And she studied at Interlochen, several kinds of summer experiences similar to this in some way. The California Institute of the Arts, Yale, Norfolk, and Bennington College for her MFA. She's had recent solo shows at the Bowery Gallery, which is an important artist-run gallery space from the late 60s. It has a nice history, and I know a lot of our students are a fan. And also showed at the Oxbow Gallery in East Hampton. She also showed recently with her husband, the sculptor Bill Tucker, at Providence College in Rhode Island and the Miss Porter School in Connecticut. And so I would like to turn it over to Kamini.
Thank you. It's really nice to be here and meet you all. And I'm so grateful that the sun is not shining today and it's not 100 degrees. I'll be showing you just some slides from all ranging a couple or so decades back. And of course, I can't say this was my early work. This is Rembrandt. My husband and I were very, very fortunate to be able to actually have pulled out some of his drawings and etchings in the Rijksmuseum, which anyone can request to do, giving them some notice. And then you get to sit with these pieces right in front of you for as long as you want to spend. So we spent several hours. This is Jacob's dream, and an Old Testament story that has a ladder, you might notice on the right, the angel climbing the ladder. One of the things that was so wonderful is he pulled a lot of different proofs, and some of them had the ladder more visible and some less. It was a way of seeing his thinking of how much you needed to describe, how much needed to be spelled out. It's very interesting, and of course, absolutely beautiful, the quality of the marks, every little, and these were very small. They were just like 4 by 5 or something like that. I just loved the use of the negative space, the blank space. He did several iterations of this, and nothing really changed. The white area became even whiter. It's not that he went in and really, fleshed out like the back. So he obviously wanted that. And this is a Goya print called Big Booby, which is the character with the castanets, the kind of monster / clown. I guess there were musical clowns in parades that were named that. And then a cowering figure on the left. It's very unclear what the subject is, but it's clearly from his imagination, sparked by the process. And that's I guess why I'm including that. I'm just including some slides that have qualities that I find very special to me, very important to me. This, of course, is Cézanne, a late Cézanne, which is a painting of 2 trees that I never saw. And we went to Edinburgh recently. It was there. So I don't know why it doesn't figure in more books, but it's a gorgeous painting. The slide doesn't at all do it justice. There's a lot more nuance in the negative space. The way he's using the limbs of the tree, the branches, and creating spaces within them, the spaces then operating both behind them and also coming out, creating whole new structures and forms. These are things that I've been thinking a lot about recently. Monet, late Monet, the water, this is a detail of a water lily painting, a large one. And I think I put this one in because I love especially late Monet and also the bridge paintings, but I couldn't find an adequate one for the lecture. But this, I mean, his handling and every mark having a meaning in and of itself with the gesture and the force of the speaking that it makes, what it's saying in describing what it's describing is, I think, crucial to a painting. Now, this is a bas-relief of Donatello. It's called the Pazzi Madonna. I just think it's one of the most remarkable things ever. If you just relax your vision for a moment and look at her face and see where it goes in space. For me, it comes jutting out. But then in the split second, Jesus, the Christ child, comes jutting out. And they both do this dance of then being in this vibration of back and forth to utter simultaneity of that line right in between the foreheads and the nose. So it's like it all comes to that point. And to me, it's the epitome of this energy and movement and stillness, which I think is at the heart of so much good art. So this is a drawing. It's a fairly large drawing, 5 feet by like 3.5 feet. And it's with charcoal and pastel or white chalk. But what I was doing is preparing the paper and then putting oil on it and then putting soft charcoal or like white chalk, and it would kind of liquefy that. So I really liked what that would do. It gave a really delicious kind of quality to the charcoal, to how the line could, a richness. I was working with a lot of images. I was doing a lot of drawings of our daughter, who studied Odissi Indian dance for many years. And I would take photographs and do drawings from her classes. And this is just, mostly I would do these things. These were studio work, just from memory, from feeling, from my gut, as it were. And the brown paper, I put up the paper with the old-fashioned brown paper tape method. And then I decided to start, to compositionally extend it, and decided that I kind of liked the tape being in there and the change of tone. This is another one. It was you can kind of see how it's running. I think you can kind of see the kind of liquidity to the. I would use a rag or even rubber gloves and swipe areas, and then use the charcoal. This is only with charcoal and oil, but it's amazing with the oil, how it can make it become a kind of paint. And this one was just a kind of invention of the forms of the body and the angles, the directional shapes. I was getting interested in that, as well as an overall sense of grandeur that the Indian sculptures and art forms had, which I was very interested in at the time. And I still love them very much, but I visited the caves, the Ajanta and Ellora caves in India, which are just incredible, remarkable examples of sculptures in what they call the living rock. If anyone has an opportunity to visit that, they're amazing. This is called Nairatmya. It's a large 5.5 by 7 feet oil. And I was doing work like this. I was inventing, using sculptures, positions of sculptures that I'd seen, and kind of inventing what felt to me like a story without a narrative, without a linear narrative, a kind of something happening that would forever be happening as it was, if that makes any sense. And I was also doing little 8 inches by 9 inches or something. These were our little fresco panels. I'm afraid it kind of got bounced around during the years, and I didn't really intend all the scuff marks on it, but they're in mudras. In the hand gestures are called mudras, and they have meanings. Doing a lot with fresco then too. And this is Durga, one of the deities, the female mother deities. And it's like 5 feet. This is about 5 feet tall. Also at that time, this is a very large, very tall painting. It's 90 inches by 78. And it had a figure kind of dancing along the pinnacle of the mountains. So I really wanted to get the space, and I needed to have the figure out of there in order to have a quality I felt of looking down at pine trees and then looking up and over at another mountain with mist in between. I think I was really enamored of a vast kind of an image of vastness. They kind of moved at that point to, well, I guess what was happening from this one, which I called flying, because that was just the sense it gave me spatially, what I was trying to get. I felt very uncertain. The images taken from, say, Asian sculpture or even the Indian dance, I felt like there was a removal, and I wanted, that it was something still like outside of myself. I wanted to have like a more, like, feel that things were emerging more from me. So I started to do work that stayed very open as far as imagery, stayed very abstract in the materials until I saw something in it. So even both in drawings and in painting. So this is not a huge drawing. It's called Prophet, 22 inches by 18 inches. And I would just, I'd rub things out. I'd go in and move around just very instinctively, very intuitively. It was all a very intuitive process, a very physical process. And then I would step back, and at a certain point, I would just see the figure and basically kind of make it more clear. And often, though, like, go on with it. It would just become a process and lead to its final, how it finally wanted to be. This is Angel. It's 40 by 32 inches. And again, it's that technique of gessoing paper and then using and covering it with linseed oil is what I used. And then going in with charcoal. I also used paint stick here. It was a very sensual kind of medium. The charcoal, the paint stick, you could really get into the marks. And again, the figure really emerged from it. And also at the same time, there were these paintings that were coming out. This is called Journey. This was 2019. It's 66 by 78 inches. And the process really became this, as I have been saying, just this very intuitive physical moving around, very just throwing out what color, just being in the process, scraping back, looking back, standing back, kind of getting into a meditative mode, looking at it, seeing what would come out to me. And eventually, and sometimes it would take weeks. And eventually something would appear. And I mean, they were figures or animals. And the bird did not come out right away. The first thing that appeared was the figure, which my father had passed away the year before, and he had lived to a very ripe old age. But when it came out, it was definitely a portrait of him, not so much in figure, but in his face. And I just felt like I had to kind of honor what I was seeing. I felt compelled to delineate the images that I saw. And but I felt something was missing. And it was another couple of weeks before all of a sudden I walked in and was looking at it. And I just kind of saw this bird, this huge bird. And it all had a kind of meaning that I can't spell out to you, but it seemed to be like a fable or a tale of transition. And it didn't at all seem morbid to me. It seemed actually very positive. But as I said, yeah, I didn't really care or ask like what it was saying. It was just this sense of a connection, I suppose, and a sense of meaning. And this was another one that came out at that time that I called the weight of clouds. It's 66 by 86. And I saw this figure on the right, kind of awkwardly carrying clouds. It amazed me, this whole period of time with the clarity with which out of nothing, something would appear. It was like I would never have, come up with that figure in that posture, never. So anyway, that's how these were done. And there were more than what I'm showing you, but this I called Bringing Light. It's 60 by 36 inches. And the paint was getting very thick on them. And this one is just a pretty boring title. It's just called Deer Listening. I don't know what else to, because that's what I saw. This deer putting its head down, like as though it was listening to something going on in the midst of a tree, in the middle of a tree, which became kind of pretty cataclysmic. It's 60 by 48 inches. This is called Frozen. This is a different thing now. That was like, as I said, there were many more of that, of working in that way. This was more of just moving into asking the painting to resolve less. I mean, not sure I put that right. I asking of the painting to not be so resolved and being with the process more and being more open with what image did come and kind of feeling like I needed the imagery to be interesting to me, to kind of touch a point in me where I felt like I was being communicated to by some deeper part of myself. And that felt somehow very important. And I needed that connection. But this is kind of letting go of that and doing work that was more free floating with the connection that happens. There were still the images that were appearing, like this one, which is called Message, 60 by 40. And this is I just kind of put this in because, I had the feeling when I did this, and there was a couple others around this time too, that the images were kind of dark and not in color, but and it did seem like some pronounced the earth or things happening in the earth. And it was right before the pandemic. It was directly before the pandemic. So this also was a smaller painting. I wanted to start working smaller. I was working that large scale for many, many years because it was the only way I could really bring images out and reach this state of connectedness with it. For some reason, I needed to feel like it was like a sculptural process, like inhabiting physical space that was the size of my reach. And I really wanted to be able to not be bound by being so large, because it's inconvenient for one thing. And I don't want to have restrictions. So anyway, this just kind of came out 30 by 24. I had been all along, and you'll see in a few slides further on, examples of these small observational paintings that I've been doing for many, many years. So it's not like nature images I haven't worked with, but this was in the studio. And I really liked this when it came out. It really encapsulated all of like what I was feeling. It was not an easy time. And no, it wasn't an easy time for most people. This is around the same time. I may not have these in the best order. My apologies. This is going back to a large one, 90 inches wide, 66 high. Again, though, this went through many changes, and it had a large crow. The crow was flying towards you. It was standing at the edge. And I just had I felt the need to let go of those images that were maybe telling too much of a story. Didn't really want it to be about that. This is called Shifting Ground, this period of time, which felt very uncertain and in the midst of change, where I wanted landscape to be able to function through my invention and tell its own story. And the branches, like with the little yellow painting that I just showed, the branches were becoming really, really important to me visually, and in the making of them, in the drawing of the line. The bringing together of drawing and painting is something that I've wanted to have happen for many decades, because I had the feeling that my drawings could go somewhere that my paintings always were trying to catch. And so it felt like finally there was something with both the form of branches and the size of a brush and the way that an arm can make a mark that could hold it all kind of in a place together. And so I thought, well, let's just make something of like an apple tree-ish. And then I saw a figure. I saw the figure and it had the head of a bird. And I'm only showing this because this was the process that was happening. And you can see it wasn't just a stop here, start there. It was a back and forth thing. So I called it Birdman. But it just wasn't, I wanted to let go of that. So I took inspiration from a painter whose work I love, John Lees, who works very thickly and works for decades on the same thing. And he will be brutal with his canvases and peel things off and use paint strip and whatever. So I was very frustrated myself, and I decided to go in with some kind of a mat knife and spackle thing, and I tore off a huge amount of it. So, and this painting, this canvas had like about 5 complete paintings on it. So, which is, I mean, I want to dampen anyone's enthusiasm about being a painter, but this is like over 3 decades, about 6 different whole paintings. But yeah, it's all part of the process. And I really like this painting. So I'm glad that, it's what it took, I guess. But the dark, and I guess it looks like a limb of a tree that's kind of coming up that's a dog coming up from the back or the shoulders of the dog. And then it loops around and goes to what I think you could see as the trunk of a tree. That's very thick. And the area in between there too is all like all those decades of paint. And then elsewhere, it's much thinner. It's still thick, but it's thinner paint. And, you know, as I said, things are not, it didn't just stop. The images, if I saw it really clearly, and I saw this head and nose and front paws of the dog, that's all I saw. I felt compelled to put it in. Now, will I continue to feel, if I see something like that again, will I continue to feel compelled to finish the entire dog? You know, that's a question. I'm not sure, because you know, in taking lesson from, say, the first Rembrandt, the one with the white, the artist drawing the model, and many Goya, you know, they indicated just as much as they wanted and did not feel compelled to have to finish off a form. But I was happy with how, I call this rest. And in a way, it's kind of like the rest, like the entire canvas is resting. This was at the same time, and it was close after the smaller yellow painting. So this one also just kind of came out in the studios from invention memory. You know, I started just with the thought of an orchard, and it evolved very much through the material and through the mark making. It's not that big. It's 18 by 24. Needless to say, I was very happy that I could pull off what I felt happy with these paintings. And I felt like finally I could work at this smaller scale in the same kind of way. The gesture seemed full and complete, and the image also. And then these are a few that I'm going to show, smaller still, 12 by 16. These were some of just the studies that I would do, looking out at some magnificent hydrangea bushes that we have. I was getting very into, again, like still with the branches. And maybe because I love drawing so much. I don't know. This is 18 by 24. This was a funny one. I started it in one season, which was like kind of early August, and dabbed away at it over, you know, with other things in between, and ended in September or late September. And I thought, you know what, I don't have to, like, it doesn't have to be all like consistent to a particular time and light. I don't know why I was holding myself to that. So this kind of is a time lapse of seasons. And again, just a quick study. But what I was feeling at that time was that when I would do these paintings from observation, nature just overwhelms me, which is, I think, why I go into the studio and paint from memory and imagination. The amount of nuance of tone and shape, and I'm always drawn to the chaotic. Even looking at the store at the various levels and mixes, the weaving, the tapestry of branches upon branches, rather than, say, a tree and space and another tree, and where those things are in space and horizon line perspective. I mean, the eyes can see so much, and I have experienced a lot of being trapped in observation to feel like almost like a force is upon me and I have to record every tiny little thing. And that's like the end. It's just kind of the death of energy. So I realized that if I just let go and I didn't focus so much, and I didn't really look too much at what I was doing, just enough to know where my hands were, that things would organize. The composition, the marks would create an organization that I couldn't have consciously done. So this has been a big lesson to me, and one that I find really fascinating, with overtones of just how much do we consciously have to do something? You know, like, especially in art, I think it's a phenomenal opportunity to see how much happens when we do less, and much less than we think we need to do. Anyway, this is clouds, and it's 24 by 36. And I really started to love doing the hydrangea bushes when they were not in bloom, when like after the leaves had fallen. So this is the clouds and mist that is coming through, and this one was inspired by the cherry trees at Central Park. I did a bunch of sketches, but then this I did in my studio. And it's 18 by 24, and it's really encrusted with paint. You might be able to see up in the middle. What the branches were doing for me, what they still are doing for me, whether it's the fruit trees or whether it's elms, the elm limbs, the curving limbs of elm trees, or the bushes, is I love how they are drawing through meeting each other, irregardless of where they are in space. They're drawing, they make a drawing, and they create other forms, other three-dimensional forms. If you look long enough at these shapes, at the negative spaces between the branches. And those shapes are, sometimes they seem to hover out in front or above the trees. So this is what's fascinating me, and what I intend to be doing more work from. This is a painting done around that time, not so much with those intentions, but again, just getting comfortable with letting whatever wanted to come out, 28 by 36, and based on, it's half observational and half invented. Same way, like soaking up a lot of the information through studies and then just letting it become an invented thing. This is called Last Fall. It's 24 by 36. And this is called Red Ground. And was just an idea I had that I wanted to see if I could make happen, of when the light would catch the filaments of thin branches of these bushes, and contrasting with the dark behind them, depending on the light of the day. But then it kind of went into this crazy imagined, and I just felt like playing with the scale change, because that would not be the scale of the flowers. Obviously, they almost become like mountain peaks. I like playing with the imagery and inventing with it and just letting it go where it wants. This is a drawing from that time. Like if you had climbed a tree and you were looking at other limbs coming off of it. It's 32 by 42, and the same charcoal and oiled paper. And this is called October. It's 40 by 40. And it's kind of the last one I did in that series, and kind of combines what was going on with clouds and the branches, the interest I have with the branches. I need to be in the paint, into the process, and in the flow of it, and let it really speak without too much controlling it. And so it goes its own place. And this got a lot more dense than where it was going to go, but that's okay. I also see sometimes in the shapes between trees and branches, this kind of cathedral-like shapes, and then makes me think of stained glass and the way that the light filters through leaves and the colors in the fall. And I always love that liquidity of light and color. So that was what I was thinking about with this. And this is a kind of funny one to end on, but this fresco, this is a fresco. I like to make use of the very bright lime. that the whites show. And it's, I'm trying to work with that idea, as I was saying, of the elms. This is elms and pines, moving backwards and forwards. It's tricky, and it will occupy me for a while, I think, because if it's stated too strongly, because it just went through different stages, all the lines can sit too much on the front, on the surface. Getting them to sit back and also to create other shapes is what I'm going for. So that's it from my slides.
Thank you. That was really nice. I'm really curious about fresco, how you came to that, and what you feel that it offers your work.
So we were at Skowhegan long time ago, and they offered, I don't know if they still do, they had someone just teaching it technically, and I loved it. I just loved it. So when we got back home, when we were living, actually we were living in New York State, across from the Delaware Water Gap, not that far from here. I got a huge sack of lime from Easton, Pennsylvania, which I don't think you can get it anymore like that, and slaked barrels. So I have like this really volatile, like 35, 40-year-old lime that's outrageous in my basement. So I've gone through a lot of time when I don't use it, because it's quite a process, and I haven't really worked out how to do it indoors. So it's something like a seasonal thing. But what I love about it is the vibrancy of the white is just something that is almost like a light is behind it. It's so luminous. It's unbelievable how luminous it is. And that there's also another quality that is kind of, I find it's very difficult. When you paint into the lime, into the wet, into Nako, the wet surface, it has to be at the right degree of dryness, so that it still absorbs the pigment and will not wash off when it dries, but also you don't pick up a lot of the surface itself, because that muddies it up. So every brush stroke often has to be rinsed. So you're applying, but even then it's very, it's very delicate, like where you start, when you start, and the size of the surface. So I see why it was done on large surfaces, because when you have that spread out surface, it dries better and it absorbs, and everything seems to work better. But when you're putting on the pure pigment, since that's what you put on, pure ground pigment mixed with water, that's all. When you put it on and it soaks in a bit, and then you put more on, you get to a point where you're actually working with that pigment that you have on there. And it's a very delicate, but very beautiful surface that you can work with. I don't think what a lot of the Italian frescoes were done like this, because they would use the lime mixed into the pigment as well. And that gives it a more opaque pastel look. But this is what I found you could get with it. And it's just, there's something intoxicating about it almost. When you get that point, like maybe an athlete would feel if they're getting, like, I don't know, doing whatever an athlete might, or a dancer, maybe I'd vibe with them. When you're just like hitting the zone, it's an interesting material.
Thank you for being here.
Oh,
Would you speak to your title, The Hand Sees What the Eye Feels?
yes, I forgot. That's about what I was saying towards the end about the recognition that there's an intelligence, I think, that's coming, a deep knowingness about our relationship with the nature around us, with everything around us, and even with our perceptual organs that is happening through our body and apart from the eyes, the perceiving, cognition. So I really felt like if I let my hand, that my hand would feel, that my hand would just do and put into compositions, into structures that I would not have been able to come up with on like in a conscious way, that it would happen through the body, through the hand. And it's of course related to the what you see and what you're loving, you know, what you see and what you love of what you see. But going after directly something that you are responding to, that you're seeing, and going at that in an extremely conscious, deliberate, aware way, like you know exactly what you're doing, you have an idea what you're about to do, you know, you're totally in control, you know, that part of your mind is in control, doesn't get me there as much as just letting it go and trusting the movements of that my body has felt something, has seen something, and it comes out through that way.
Thank you, Kamini.